I am a certified forest therapy guide and nature lover and a former engineer, General Motors person, corporate executive who has come all the way back to her original love of climbing trees and hanging out in ponds with pollywogs and frogs and things like that. So that's a little bit about me.
Perfect. Thank you. And so like you definitely have had like a lot of like different like occupations and like a very big career, again, working for General Motors. How did you sort of like come back to being an author?
Yeah, it was a long journey, and because the truth is, I had been programmed into thinking you had to have a degree, like an MFA or something, some credentials outside of yourself to be given permission to call yourself a writer. And so I struggled for a while with that, like who am I kind of question, and I just, but I've always loved the written word. I've loved the way words can move people to tears or to laughter or to nail biting or to action. And so I thought, well, if not me, who? And if not now, when? And so I began to take a lot of courses on the craft to learn the craft. So Maine Writers and MWPA, Maine Writers and Publishers Association, has some really great courses um, in in really honing your craft. So I did a lot of that um, to the point where I felt, and I read a lot of books on writing, and to the point where I felt, okay, I can do this.
Is there a particular reason or a moment that you knew you wanted to do like children's literature?
No, that it's a funny thing, Rachel. I actually didn't set out to write a children's book. I was simply feeding my creative impulse one day, sitting underneath a big beech tree in our Hope Cemetery, one of my favorite places to walk. And I was just looking around, and it was a fall day just like this. And I was looking around and saying, oh my gosh. And all of a sudden, this little rhymey verse. I'm a songwriter too, so I'm always kind of catching lyrics and little melody strains and things. So I'm kind of, it's a practice. I'm always sort of attending to what's going on in my ears. And this little rhyme, is there a place in the sun I can skip, roll, or run? Then rest neath the tree, hear the breeze in her leaves. And I just began right then and there to kind of write this rhymey thing down. And I wasn't quite sure, what it would be. But a few people said, wow, that would make such a great children's book. And I was like, oh, I guess it could. Um, and so and so that's it. And then, cut to almost 2 years later, and here's the children's book that came from it. For me, it's really feeding my imagination and my creative impulse in whatever form and shape it takes. Um, and in my particular, I do not ask me to draw anything. I'm a horrible Pictionary partner, that kind of thing. But it's words, it's melodies, it's songs, it's that whole bardic tradition of my ancestors,
Yep.
the storytelling and the singing and so anytime I can carve out the time to feed that creative impulse, that's a good day.
Nice. I knew that you had used an illustrator. So, and you had just mentioned like you don't feel very strongly in your skills for drawing.
Yeah, no, 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 I didn't even try. I just knew that someone would have to render it on the page, not me. And so fortunate to have Susie Linden. Of course, she's from right next, your next town over in Denmark, but she so, so I was working with this publisher, 12 Willows, who's also in Maine. And so we said, well, this is about what happens on the inside when we go outside, but it's also about Maine. And so I said, we need to have a Maine illustrator. And the publisher hunted around, and I started looking on Instagram, hashtag Maine illustrator. And I discovered Susie, and I loved, she's an artist who can't really be pinned down in the same way that I can't be pinned down. Like I'm not out, I do all kinds of things, but, and so I just loved the acrylic paintings that she had done. And so I reached out to her and I said, would you be interested? And I can put you in touch with the publisher. And she said, yes. And so now we get this just incredible, oh my gosh. Well, you've seen it at your story walk.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we have touched on a couple of like the challenges you had when you first started writing. Is there any other challenges that you found you faced and how you handled them when you first started writing?
I think there's a stick-to-itiveness that's very important, because the truth is there's all this downward pressure on rejecting writers' works. And I don't know if you know that I have a novel coming out in March or April next year. And so that has been a 10-year devotion. I started writing it in the fall of 2015. Here it is finally coming out in the spring of 2025. And so when I first started writing it, I really kept it a secret. I mean, part of it could have been because I was afraid someone would say, but the other part was I didn't want to spill the energy, the creative energy. And I wanted to just let it kind of be in me, be in my own bubble, and let it sort of be in a bubble without talking about it a lot. And so to the point where my brothers and sisters were like, what are you doing? You're doing something, but you're not telling us. I have 7 brothers and sisters. So I think the biggest challenge is to believe in yourself and to believe that you can do it. And so this happens to be the book cover. It's not out yet. Of course, it's not even in print yet, but
I wasn't going to ask, but
the
since
cover.
you're writing.
You are the first person to see it. So it's called A Moon in All Things, and it's set in Ireland in 1820s. And it has original songs because I can write songs. But I think the believe in yourself part, I think that if you truly believe that there's a story that wants to be written, and in my case, this was a story to kind of honor my Irish heritage, to honor the dreams that were coming to me that were really very ceremonial and strange and magical in a sense. And just because I felt that, and part of it's a heroine's journey to learn and really, what I want to say is, adopt the old healing ways of her great grandmother at a time when those were considered very dangerous by the powers that were at the time. So a lot of nature medicines are in there, the foraging for the wildflower plants and things like that, which I love that part as well.
No, that sounds amazing. My
Yeah.
maternal side is Italian, so I've been trying to like get more in touch with like Italian like folklore and like folk medicine.
Ooh.
Uh, so what are some of the most rewarding things that you found through your writing?
I love the writing community. And Maine has a great one. And it's just, look, you don't do this for the money, right? So you have to have a different measure for success than, again, the programming that says, titles, money, minions, stuff, and that's really what we've all been taught success looks like. And the truth is that none of that is fulfilling. Anyway, it's very elusive. You're chasing those things for what? It just doesn't have any meaning. So I feel like being in a writing community is one of the new definitions for success. It's all earnest hearts trying to craft something, trying to feed something, devoted to something that may or may not live in the world. It's a real it's a real risk and gift to get published. It's very difficult. So I do think that one of the upsides is this just a terrific group of co-writers who support each other. I'm constantly buying everybody's books. It's like sacred craft. And you think spinners and weavers, they love spinning and weaving and talking that shop. And so it's just being in that community of really good people.
I hear ya. Do you usually use beta readers?
I do. So Maine MWPA has a give and take program. I think it's called give and take, where you swap manuscripts or at least, bodies of work. It doesn't have to be a completed thing, and read each other's and then provide constructive feedback. So I've done that several times. I've made some really good friends from doing that with other fellow writers. And then I've reached out, of course, to my own networks of people. And it's a funny thing, just for anybody who's writing, do not be surprised if some of your closest friends never read it. People are busy. And so at first I was really hurt because I would like, here's this love offering. I put my heart and soul into it. I would love it if you read it, and crickets, right? So it happens, and I've had to kind of get over that because people are busy. They have their
Hmm.
lives.
And so what are some ways that you keep yourself motivated? Like your newest book, like you said, this has been like a labor of love, you said, of like 10 years. So like how
Yeah.
did you like keep that motivation going to like not abandon this project?
Well, it was really, I want to say, 2 years writing, and then it was going through an exhaustive editing process where I paid professionals to edit it, and at multi levels. I mean, I didn't even know this at the time. There's, you edit at the first level for story structure, the overarching story, and then you edit at the character development level. Is this character has, you have to have movement, growth, whatever in the character, or failure. And then you edit it, for pacing, and then and then you finally get edit it, copy edit. And so if someone thinks that all they need is someone to read it with an eye toward like commas and M dash versus N dash, they're probably they probably are missing out on a chance to possibly make it even better with the people who look for all those other things when they read. I don't I think again, it's about believing that there's a place for the story in the world. And that's what kept motivating me to keep querying and sending out these queries for agents. And, the funny thing is an agent doesn't want you unless you're published, and publishers don't want you unless you have an agent. And so it's this crazy scenario in which, how do you break in? So I think, again, I just felt that there had been enough of the dark, angry, twisted, and tortured stories out in the world. We were all in love with those at one point in time, the super dysfunctional everything,
Hmm.
not reliable narrators, all that. And I just felt this is in some ways, this novel of mine is more, it's more of an enchanting, beguiling story. Like I would sit down and I would literally like imagine imbuing it with the energy of enchantment, and and just having readers fall in love again with the natural world and what's possible, and how you can, claim your own gifts that had been latent, in the case of my protagonist. So I feel like just believing that the story needs to live in the world was for me motivation to keep going.
For me, my last big question is, can you help or offer a suggestion for where people can get started? Like breaking into sort of like that publishing industry, especially if you wanted to do like the traditional publishing route with like having an editor and like an agent.
Mm-hmm. Well, I started by submitting to anthologies, and I just feel like I needed to create a track record of publications. And so whether it's magazines or even letters to the editor, or some volunteering. For a while there, I was a contributor to a little regional magazine called Close to Home, and I was writing about interior decorating, but I was writing and I was using that storytelling craft. Um, and then I've got like this anthology and that anthology and that anthology. And so I just was submitting, to those. And once you got something that's a little bit of a wow, she's been published in these, they may not be the New Yorker, but they're something. They demonstrate that the person is committed to the craft and the person is committed to following through and all that. So I think that's probably the best advice, is to just start small and start where you can and start building up your credentials so that when you do reach out to try to find an agent, you've got something to stand on. Cool.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else that you wanted to let me know or say before we sign off for today?
No, just again, I think underscoring that to craft, for new writers or for any writer, it's to craft your own definition for success, because it does look a lot different than what we've all been schooled in. And it can be super meaningful and really, if I hadn't listened to my own intuitive inclination to write a story set in the homeland of my ancestors, I just think I would be living a poorer life, a lot. And I don't mean monetarily poorer,
Yeah,
bereft of some of the richness of the things that I've learned and the craft that I've learned and everything else. So that's, I guess, what I would say.
perfect. All right. Thank you and have a good
Okay.
one.
Thanks. You too. Take care. Bye.